saw the face of loving God, would you change? Would you change? If you knew that love can break your heart when you're down so low you cannot fall, would you change? Would you change? How bad, how good does it need to get? How many losses, how much regret? What chain reaction, what cause and effect makes you turn around, makes you try to explain, makes you forgive and forget, makes you change. If you knew alone, knowing right but being wrong? Would you change? Would you change? If you knew that you would find a truth that brings up pain that can't be soothed, would you change? Would you change? How bad, how good does it need to get? How many losses, how much regret? What chain reaction, what cause and effect makes you turn around, makes you try to explain, makes you forgive and forget, makes you change, makes you change. Are you so upright you can't be bent if it comes to blows? Are you so sure you won't be crawling? If not for the good, why risk falling? Why risk falling? If everything you think you know makes your life unbearable, would you change? Would you change? If you've broken every rule and vow, and hard times come to bring you down, would you change? Would you change? Would you change? Would you change?
Good morning, and good day to all of you. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Toledo on this wonderful 24th day of November 2024. I'm Terry McCauley, today's service associate. With me is David Strickler. Excuse me. He's our Toledo Unitarians Commission lay minister. Randy Ritchie is doing a fine job on the piano, and he's conducting our First Unitarian choir. And as you just heard, seminarian and junior minister Melissa Jeter is our soloist. Yes, she's wonderful. Yeah. Gwen Wilson, our Unitarian Action Committee chair, will tell today's story. And our very able tech crew is led by our producer-director, Walter McGee, and Krista Schneider, the vice president of our board of trustees, is controlling the cameras. Jeffrey Maxey, who is also our music director, is at the soundboard. And Julia McGee, the acting president of our Board of Trustees, takes on a kind of general assignment for tech support. She's a good supporter. We have many more volunteers helping too, with greeters in the lobby, religious education helpers, and today's RE activities. And we have a kitchen crew preparing for coffee hour led by Carla Logan Mercer. We are a church with no official doctrine or creed. You don't have to sign anything that says we believe to belong to this religious community. Excuse me. But we do encourage everyone to develop your own credos, your own beliefs. We support each other in our own searches for truth and meaning, and sometimes finding. We welcome everyone, as we sang in our opening song. So if you are a visitor, know you're welcome, and you might notice in the pew rack in front of you a bookmark. On that bookmark lists the 7 principles of Unitarian-Universalism. On the back are the 6 sources. We encourage you to take that home. You're welcome to it. There's also a yellow card. Now, if you fill that out, that's a way of you introducing yourselves to us. And if you include your email address, we'll send you our weekly email that talks about the different activities and what's going on in the church. As you meet people today, smile and say hello. And then ask any questions you may have. We're here to welcome you and want you to join us. Now, we also welcome those of you who are watching and listening to us on our YouTube channel. Whether it's today, live, or minutes later on. Know that we appreciate you being there. We hope that this time serves your spirit.
Good morning. I'm David Strickler, commissioned lay minister serving this congregation, along with our senior minister, Reverend T.K. Barger, and our student minister, Melissa Jeter. I'll add to Terry's welcome by bringing your attention to the table in front of me here with all the candles. If you'd like to light a candle for grief, for hope, for gratitude, or in memory or honor of a loved one, you may do so whenever the music is playing today. I'll also note that the flame of our chalice that we light every Sunday results from a spark which initiates the transformation of alcohol and oxygen into water and carbon dioxide while generating warmth and light. Our chalice flame symbolizes courage and illumination and honors our search for truth and meaning. As Terry lights the flame, let's all say the words for chalice lighting together. They'll be on the screen in a moment and in the order of service. Okay. We have patience. I think we'll move forward. There we are. There's Terry. With the words from the order of service. Our chalice has the spirit of Unitarian-Universalism. We light it centered in love. May it glow with sacredness and shine for each and for all. And while we're reciting together, Terry will lead us in saying the covenant of this congregation. This is not a creed, but what we share with general agreement and what we as a religious community work towards.
Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its prayer, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Beyond ourselves is the time in our service to reflect on news or events that might be on our minds, in our hearts, or with our spirits. I have felt anxious recently due to the many troubles in our world, from the aggressions and suffering in the Middle East and Ukraine to the precarious future of our democratic republic. While I feel it is important to stay informed about local, national, and world events, I confess that I had to take a break from the news cycle for my psychological and spiritual well-being. And perhaps some of you have needed a break as well. As a way to renew your spirit, you might want to consider actions which you can take that are compatible with your financial and physical abilities, such as attending concerts by local or community musical groups, visiting the art museum, donating to organizations that advocate for civil rights or for issues of equity, justice, and peace, or by attending lectures, rallies, or protests. Such individual actions may seem small, but the people that lead those advocacy groups and the people that organize community or political events need to have their spirits lifted by support from thoughtful allies. The topic of today's service is transformation. So I will foreshadow the sermon by reflecting on a transformational event that coincidentally happened on this date 165 years ago in Great Britain. On November 24th, 1859, Charles Darwin finally published his monumental work on the origin of the species by natural selection. Prior to Darwin, some natural philosophers recognized that plants and animals had changed over time. However, many natural philosophers continued to believe in the absolute fixity of the species for two reasons. First, no one had identified a mechanism by which species could change. And two, the biblical creation accounts seem to imply fixed species. Since God had created the species, they must be perfect, so there would be no reason for species to change or evolve. Charles Darwin gathered evidence during his 5-year global voyage, and when he returned to England, he corresponded with dozens of colleagues to collect their observations. Darwin then spent over 2 decades considering those accumulated results and building one long argument, as he called it, to explain how biological species had transformed over the millennia. Darwin's theory of evolution was not perfect or complete, but it transformed biological science. Every aspect of modern biology is understood through the lens of evolutionary theory. Moreover, Darwin's theory transformed views on religion and spirituality. Biblical literalists and other religious conservatives feared that evolutionary theory would undermine the truth of their religion, so they dug in and pushed back. And if you consider spirituality as a sense of connection to something greater than oneself, whether it is God, nature, or humanity, Darwin's theory showed our deep connection to the natural world. Humans are not set apart from nature, as the biblical traditionalists maintained. We are part of the interdependent web of existence. We, the members and friends of this congregation are a community of communities. We are interdependent and connected to each other in different ways. We can share burdens and be glad for accomplishments, and we are together in the many dimensions of spirit that we bring to this religious gathering. Amen. Now, I hope you'll join us in singing our opening hymn, number 343, A Fire, Mist, and a Planet. I selected this hymn because it is the only hymn I have ever seen that uses the word saurian, as in dinosaur. So if you're willing and able, please stand and sing with us. Gwen Wilson has kindly agreed to read the story today, so I invite her to come forward with any children that want to join her.
Can everybody hear me? Good morning. Good morning. Our story today is The Butterfly and the Cocoon. Can you say that? Butterfly and cocoon?
Butterfly and cocoon.
Okay, and this is a tale from Islam. I'm going to have a helper a little later on in the story. Her family is Muslim, and she's going to help me with the story. The Butterfly and the Cocoon, a tale from Islam. A man found the cocoon of a butterfly. One day, a small opening appeared. The man sat and watched the butterfly for several hours as it struggled to force its body through the little hole. Then it seemed to stop making any progress. It appeared as if it had gotten as far as it could go, and it could go no further. So the man decided to help the butterfly. He took a small pair of scissors and snipped off the remaining bit of the cocoon. The butterfly then emerged easily, but it had a swollen body and small, shriveled wings. The man continued to watch the butterfly because he expected that at any moment the wings would enlarge and expand to be able to support the body, which would contract in time. Neither happened. In fact, the butterfly spent the rest of its life crawling around with a swollen body and shriveled wings. It never was able to fly. What the man, in his kindness and haste, did not understand was that the restricting cocoon and the struggle required for the butterfly to get through the tiny opening were Allah's way of forcing the fluid from its body of the butterfly into its wings so they would be bigger and it would be ready for flight once it had achieved its freedom from the cocoon. So it needed to exercise like that to make its wings bigger and stronger. Sometimes struggles are exactly what we need in our life. If Allah allowed us to go through our lives with any obstacles, it would cripple us. We would not be strong as we could have been. We could never fly.
I asked for strength.
And Allah gave me difficulties to make me strong.
I asked for wisdom.
And Allah gave me problems to solve.
I asked for prosperity.
And Allah gave me a brain and brawn to work.
I asked for courage.
And Allah gave me danger to overcome.
I asked for love.
And Allah gave me troubled people to help.
I asked for favors.
And Allah gave me opportunities.
I received nothing I wanted.
I received everything I needed. So blessed be Allah, the best of creators. How many of you have ever asked for anything, like asking your parents for money, and they say, what can they say sometimes if you ask them for money?
You need to work for it.
Yeah. They might give you a little job that you can do to work for it, and that job will help you because then you'll be able to make your money when people can't give anything to you. And that's what we have to learn. Thank you.
Let's sing for the children, as this is the time when they and their teachers leave our service for religious education. For the second segment of spiritual practice in our Sunday service, we'll have a time of mindful meditation, contemplation, and prayer. I have a poem by Rebecca Ann Parker entitled, "In the Midst of a World." In the midst of a world marked by tragedy and beauty, there must be those who bear witness against unnecessary destruction, and who with faith rise and lead in freedom, with grace and power. There must be those who speak honestly and do not avoid seeing what must be seen of sorrow and outrage, or tenderness and wonder. There must be those whose grief troubles the water, while their voices sing and speak refreshed words. There must be those whose exuberance rises with lovely energy that articulates earth's joys. There must be those who are restless for respectful and loving companionship amongst human beings, whose presence invites people to be themselves without fear. There must be those who gather with the congregation of remembrance and compassion, who draw water from old wells and walk the simple path of love for neighbor. And there must be communities of people who seek to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with God, who call on the strength of soul force to heal, to transform, and bless life. There must be religious witness. Let's observe it, a minute of silence. Following that, we'll sing a reflection hymn that may be new to some of you.
Today's reading is an excerpt from an essay by UU minister Reverend Connie Simon. Reverend Simon previously served as minister of the First UU Congregation of Cincinnati and now serves as interim minister at the River Road UU Congregation in Bethesda, Maryland. The following excerpt is from her essay entitled Missing Voices. When I started attending a UU church, I was excited by the promise of worship that would come from the arts, science, nature, literature, and a multitude of voices. Indeed, some of the voices that Unitarian Universalists hear in worship each week belong to Thoreau, Emerson, Ballou, and others. Their words are beautiful, but they come from a culture and experience that's foreign to me. When do I get to hear voices from my culture? I quickly learned that, other than the same few quotes from Martin Luther King Jr. and Howard Thurman's The Work of Christmas, it wasn't going to happen. I sit attentively and listen with my head to their voices, while my heart longs to hear more of our voices. I am a black woman. When I look around on Sunday morning, I don't see many people who look like me. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised that I don't hear voices of people who share my experience. But it still hurts. I want to hear voices that tell the struggle of living under the weight of oppression. I don't hear those voices in UU churches, so I have to supplement my worship by reading black theologians like Anthony Pinn and Monica Coleman. I read Maya Angelou, James Baldwin, and my favorite poet, Paul Laurence Dunbar. Dunbar encourages me and nourishes my soul. His voice speaks to my heart.
Good morning again, everyone. And thank you, Terry, for today's reading. I will refer back to it in a few minutes, but first I want to briefly review the recently adopted guiding values of Unitarian Universalism. As Unitarian Universalists, we aspire to live and to treat one another according to the 7 values shown in this diagram, which was created by the artist Tanya Webster. Love is one of these values, and it is placed at the center to indicate that it holds us together. The other 6 values, equity, pluralism, interdependence, justice, generosity, and transformation. The other 6 values orbit around the nucleus of love. We have recently started affirming these 7 values each Sunday when we recite the words for chalice extinguishing. Today, I will focus on how I understand and value transformation. Indeed, this image on the order of service is an example of how Unitarian Universalism has transformed me. I confess that when I majored in chemistry more than 4 decades ago, I never anticipated that I would use an atomic model as a theological metaphor. As stated in our UUA bylaws, transformation means that we adapt to the changing world. Political and government leadership changes for better and for worse. Economic conditions change for better and for worse. Technology changes. The internet and cell phones have changed how we interact with one another. Transportation technology has reduced barriers to trade and cultural exchange. And it is not just that the world is changing. Our knowledge of the ongoing processes of this planet and this universe is changing as well. For example, biological evolution has been going on for 4 billion years, and Darwin only brought us to our understanding as recently as 165 years ago. Much of the chemistry that I studied decades ago was focused on solar cell technology, so I find it gratifying to see the accelerating pace of transformation in our energy supply. But I worry when I hear that AI requires us to create even more energy somehow. Transformation means that we covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. I will focus on examples of my transformation, but these changes were prompted by my interactions with other folks, with other UU ministers, with UUA staff. So these are not solely my achievements. And finally, we acknowledge that transformation requires that openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. I would love to spend 20 minutes presenting historical examples of change and transformation on both sides of our UU heritage. But today, I'll just settle for the phrase never complete or never perfect. The title of our gray hymnal, Singing the Living Tradition, suggests an openness to growing and transforming. And the title of our teal hymnal, Singing the Journey, suggests the possibility of encountering change as we travel together through this life. On several occasions, I have heard ministers, UU ministers and leaders casually use the phrase, revelation is not sealed. The Reverend Eric Walker Rickstrom writes about this phrase. He says, this statement may not seem like much. It may seem so commonplace as to be hardly worth noticing. But look around, folks. Look at the culture, the dominant culture we are submersed in. The idea that revelation is ongoing, continuous, is actually a pretty radical one. How much of what happens in our world takes place because somebody thinks that the truth was set down sometime in the past and that it should remain as it was? Because when you think that the truth was set down sometime in the past and should remain intact, you're probably going to be pretty serious about trying to defend it from people who'd changed something. And back in 1976, James Luther Adams, a highly esteemed UU minister, theologian, and professor at Harvard Divinity School, stated that religious liberalism depends on the principle that revelation is continuous. Meaning has not been finally captured. Meaning has not been captured in a final or immutable form. I first encountered today's reading as part of my training to become a commissioned lay minister. This essay, Missing Voices, revealed to me the personal truth of one African-American woman's experience in the chosen faith that she and I share. I selected this reading because it is an example of how Unitarian-Universalism has transformed my understanding of inclusion and belonging. In fact, I previously used this same reading for my sermon on widening the circle in March 2022, and I used it at a retreat for commissioned lay ministers in the Central East region of the UUA, and most recently, I used this reading for a presentation at a national conference on banjo history. If you're interested in that connection, I'll invite you to attend the Spiritual Forum on December 8th, where I will discuss Reverend Simon's favorite poet, Paul Laurence Dunbar, who was born in Dayton, received significant career boost from 2 Toledo patrons, and who wrote 2 poems about banjos as instruments of spirituality. When I consider my religious experiences, I can see transformation. I was raised in a Lutheran church in a small town in central Iowa. My parents were active at St. John's, and we attended the 8 a.m. worship service every Sunday. Much of their social life centered on their circle of church friends. I attended confirmation class as a teenager because I had to, where we memorized the Apostles' Creed and Luther's Small Catechism. But the concept of the Trinity always seemed awkward to me. The idea that God sacrificed his son, Jesus, to save us from sin made no sense to me. Focusing on my personal salvation seemed self-centered, and I wondered if that was really the sole purpose of religion. When I moved here and found First Unitarian of Toledo, I felt comfortable for several reasons. The sanctuary had pews, an organ, a choir, and a minister who spoke either from a big pulpit or a little one. The order of service had some similarities, general similarities to the Lutheran service. In particular, we used the hymn sandwich. That is, hymn, reading, sermon, with another hymn on top. Some of the hymns used familiar tunes, and they had new words, which I agreed with, which I understood. I felt that I belonged here because I already admired people who are linked to Unitarian Universalism in different ways. People like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Margaret Fuller, Thomas Jefferson, and Charles Darwin. So, if I were to revise Reverend Simon's words to reflect my experience, I would write something like, their words are beautiful, and they come from a culture and experience that's comfortable for me. I enjoyed exploring the history and ideas of those famous people, so I read thick biographies to know more about them. However, I've probably forgotten a lot more than I retained from those books. So that need to solely satisfy my intellectual curiosity started to feel less meaningful and somewhat self-centered. I still value the free and responsible search for truth, meaning, and intellectual stimulation, and I now value other aspects of Unitarian Universalism, building community, affirming the dignity and inherent worthiness of marginalized folks, siding with oppressed groups that are seeking equity and justice. Thus, reading Reverend Simon transformed my understanding of inclusion and belonging. Moreover, reading her essay led me to read her favorite poet and to read a couple dozen of his 420 poems. And I appreciated that his words are beautiful too, even the poems that aren't about banjos. Unitarian Universalism has transformed my understanding of how we can be as a church. As a new UU, I did not understand how a church could exist without requiring a creed, without a prescriptive theology. Since joining this congregation, I have recited covenants many times in different settings. When my kids were young, we developed covenants in RE classes. When I volunteered in district youth programs, it was standard practice for the youth to create covenants for their weekend events. I've served on district and regional UU committees that have covenants. The UUA Board of Trustees has a covenant. Last week, Reverend Tim referred to the aspirational covenant that we recite every Sunday and to the behavioral covenant that we created 7 years ago. And in the spirit of transformation, he suggested that perhaps it is time for us to review, revise, and renew our congregational covenant. So, Unitarian Universalism has transformed my understanding of how to be a church without a creed. Rather than requiring members to memorize explanations of the truth fully revealed, of the fully revealed truth, explanations by a 16th century dissident German friar, we agree on how to be with each other and how we will treat each other. Unitarian Universalism has also broadened my understanding of the religion that I was raised in, Protestant Christianity. At one end of the Christian spectrum are the denominations that focus on authority and control. They believe that revelation is sealed, that the divine meaning has been fully revealed. Thus, they seek to use their authority to protect and enforce the truth. Protecting the truth justifies their attempts to control behaviors via government policy, legislation, and laws. Christian nationalism clearly fits into this category. At the other end of the Christian spectrum are the denominations that focus on Jesus' message of love and liberation, which means service to others, helping those in need, welcoming the stranger, and advocating for people who are downtrodden or oppressed. As Reverend Larry Clark retired minister from Monroe Street Methodist Church, said to me, "When you reduce the gospel down to personal salvation, then you ignore everything else. And then you miss Jesus' teachings about how to live a just, compassionate life." I've presented examples of how my perspective of inclusion and belonging has been transformed, and how my understanding of Unitarian-Universalism and Christianity has changed. However, transformation is never perfect, never complete, which means that I still hold on to some vestiges of my chemical education. So let's return to chemistry by considering the flame in our chalice. The isopropyl alcohol evaporates from the surface of the liquid. You can see that's the molecule on the left with all the C's and H's for carbon and hydrogen. The alcohol evaporates where it mixes with oxygen from the ambient air. And that mixture ignites when it encounters a spark or the heat generated by a pre-existing flame. That chemical transformation creates heat and light. However, the balanced equation gives an overly simplistic view of this chemical reaction. We know that the molecules in the air are constantly in motion. So the idea that 4 or 5 or 4.5 molecules of oxygen manage to converge on one molecule of isopropyl alcohol at the same instant is unlikely. Moreover, the 5 molecules on the left side, consisting of 22 atoms, cannot physically rearrange simultaneously into 7 other molecules. The actual combustion process in the chalice flame is much more complex than that nicely balanced equation indicates. Physical chemists who study combustion have identified hundreds of intermediate species and hundreds of reactions that take place during the combustion of the simplest molecule, methane. Those intermediate reactions happen on the time scale of milliseconds or microseconds. You can see them on the right side. There's just 12 of those that occur during the first step of the burning process. The emitted flame may be bright and pure, yet the combustion process is not perfect. It also generates tiny quantities of unwanted byproducts, such as carbon monoxide and minuscule soot particles. Just as the flame in the chalice is the result of hundreds of intermediate reactions amongst hundreds of chemical species, the warmth and light of our faith tradition is the result of countless actions taken by individual Unitarian Universalists. Actions such as supporting each other during stressful times, celebrating life events or holidays together, welcoming immigrants, siding with love to stop oppression, speaking up for justice and equity, and listening to and learning from one another. And as people who value transformation, we also need to listen for the missing voices and be open to the new understanding they might bring or the changes they might inspire in us. Blessed be, and amen.
Now it's time for our offering. To ask you here in this room and those who watch on YouTube to honor the Toledo Unitarians in part through your generous financial giving. On the screen, there are several ways to make your contribution. In the sanctuary, we will pass the basket. I have these words from John Saxon. The light of our chalice would soon flicker and die without the oil that nourishes the flame. And just as this flame cannot burn without oil, this religious community cannot survive or thrive without the financial as well as the personal support of its members and friends. the oil that keeps the flame of our liberal religious faith alive and fuels the shared mission and ministry of this fellowship. Let us now give freely and generously in offering to sustain and strengthen our shared religious community, a community of memory, hope, faith, and love. For we are now the keepers of the flame that burns for justice, its dream of beloved community, its vision of a world made whole.
Everything must change. Nothing stays the same. Everything must change. Yes, no one and nothing goes unchanged. The young become the old, and mysteries do unfold. 'Cause that's the way of time. Yes, nothing and no one goes unchanged. There are not many things in life you can be sure of, except rain comes from the clouds and sun lights up the sky, and hummingbirds do fly. Winter turns to spring. A wounded heart will heal, but never much too soon. Yes, nothing and no one goes unchanged. The young become the old, and mysteries do unfold. 'Cause that's the way of time. Nothing and no one goes unchanged. There are not many things in life you can be sure, except rain comes from the clouds, sun lights up the sky, and hummingbirds do fly. Rain comes from the clouds, and sun lights up the sky, and hummingbirds do fly. Rain and the sun, hummingbirds do fly.
Thank you, Randy and Melissa, for offering that powerful song. It is the coming soon part of our service, where we'll tell you what's on the calendar for next week, we'll give some announcements, and we'll also let you know what's up for right after the service. Join us for Spiritual Forum next Sunday at 9:45 in Fellowship Hall. We will once again ask the minister. We'll sit down with Reverend Tim Barger, and congregants will be able to discuss. I didn't think my announcement was funny, but we'll sit down with Reverend Tim Barger and criticize his hairstyles. More importantly, we will be able to discuss church matters, changes, ideas, and philosophies. This will be an informal discussion and a chance to strengthen the bonds of our community, the personal bonds, not the chemical bonds. Hope to see you there. And then for the Sunday service at 11 a.m., here in the sanctuary and on our YouTube channel, we'll start the Christmas season as December 1st is the beginning of Advent. Next Sunday, we'll have a service focused on religious education led by Ginny Gottman, our Director of Lifelong Learning. She's titled it, Joy as an Act of Resistance.
Speaking of special activities for the holidays, are you appreciating our choir as much as I am? Would you like to join the choir? We would love to have you. We'd like to have more singers, and we're getting close to the December 15th music service and the Christmas Eve time for holiday stories and songs on the 24th at 5 p.m. So the choir is rehearsing special Christmas music. If you'd like to join, the time for choir practice recently changed. Now it's a Sunday-only choir with rehearsal at 9:30 a.m. and then singing in the service at 11 a.m. There are no weeknight rehearsals. If you'd like to be a member of the choir, please see our music director, Jeffrey Maxey, and show up next Sunday. It's Thanksgiving week, and here at First Unitarian, we have two opportunities to be in community at the holiday time. First, after today's service, coffee hour will be a real feast. Not just having our monthly potluck, but making it a full Thanksgiving dinner with turkey supplied, cooked by Carla Logan Mercer, our kitchen coordinator, with help from Sue Childers and many others. And the trimmings brought potluck style by you. If you're here and you didn't bring a potluck dish, that's fine. We said it's a feast, and we intend to have plenty for all. Then on this coming Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, there's going to be a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving. Much like the animated classic, this event will be an informal effort of whatever we friends can manage to pull together. Please, please RSVP to Melanie to coordinate food and games. If you know someone who would otherwise be alone on the holiday, please make sure that they also feel welcome. Both of these holiday events came about to honor a Friendsgiving approach, so you can join with others if you don't have a place for Thanksgiving, and for you to be with friends for a celebration in addition to family time that you may have with others. Eat.
Just a quick, just for the Friendsgiving on Thanksgiving, sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
On Thanksgiving Day, we will also have turkey and all of the trimmings that go with it, in addition to the, what is it, veggie toast, popcorn, butter toasted popcorn and Jordan's thing that Charlie
Okay.
turkey too.
Sounds like it's going to be great. So, okay.
Mary, can you repeat what she said so everybody is aware?
There will be turkey on Thursday.
It's going to be a good Thanksgiving week, I think. The final coming soon entry is for me to repeat the invitation for you to join us in Fellowship Hall right after today's service for coffee conversation, social time, and a holiday feast.
Our regular Sunday services this year include 3 observances of spiritual practice. During Beyond Ourselves, we had a pastoral reflection on the world outside this congregation. During Turning Inwards, we had a time for meditation, contemplation, and prayer. And now, recognizing the Buddhist thread in our congregation, we will recite the metta, or loving kindness meditation. As the words come on the screen, please look at them. We will say them together. And as we prepare to extinguish the chalice, you may have time to repeat them to yourselves. May I, may we, and may all beings be well, be happy, be peaceful, be safe, awaken to the light of our true nature, and be free. And please join me in saying our chalice extinguishing words while Terry extinguishes the chalice. We send the flame of our Unitarian-Universalist chalice with the love on which we center everything, to fire up the world, spreading equity, generosity, interdependence, justice, pluralism, and transformation. Go in peace, holding, knowing, and centering love in your lives, and sharing love in your actions. Our postlude will follow.
Sorrows Very easy. I had no clue. I got it, don't worry. So we should have said Frank Luann. She is absolutely exquisite.
I knew that would work. I just had to put her top before that. It actually was a great, great